Things just took a dramatic turn for Queen Camilla and her family after they were pulled into one of the biggest royal controversies in recent memory. The story involves a missing brooch, an alleged attempt to quietly cover everything up, and Prince William reportedly refusing to back the Queen Consort in front of the entire royal institution. It's the kind of situation that can change how people view the monarchy, and it's surprising how little attention it received at first. Here's what happened. Back in 2017, the Governor-General of Canada presented Queen Elizabeth II with an extraordinary brooch known as the Sapphire Jubilee Snowflake. It wasn't just another royal jewel, it was a state gift created to celebrate her 65 years on the throne. The brooch was crafted with rare beluga sapphires from Baffin Island and diamonds, making it a remarkable piece. More importantly, it was never considered personal property. It belonged to the crown, was meant to remain in the Royal Collection Trust, and was supposed to be preserved for future generations. That's how state gifts are handled. They aren't items the monarch can simply hand to a family member. Then came 2022. After Queen Elizabeth passed away, the palace entered a huge administrative transition. Staff were cataloguing thousands of historic items, moving collections between royal residences, and reorganizing records. During that hectic period, there was reportedly a serious gap in the inventory system. That confusion allegedly created the perfect opportunity for Camilla's sister. Here's where the story becomes even more surprising. Camilla's sister is a private citizen. She holds no royal title, has no official duties, and plays no constitutional role. Yet somehow, during the transition, she reportedly gained access to the vault where the Sapphire Jubilee brooch was stored and removed it. The brooch was then allegedly kept in her private home for months, as though it were her own jewelry. Because the inventory system wasn't being monitored properly, nobody immediately realized it had disappeared. Eventually, however, an independent audit of the state collection uncovered the problem. The brooch was missing from its proper location. Investigators began reviewing the records and concluded that it had been removed without the required authorization. There wasn't a single document or signed transfer to support it. Camilla's sister was simply keeping a state artifact in her home without any legal authority to possess it. Under British civil law, that's essentially unlawful. You can't just hold on to public property because you want it. Once the audit uncovered what had happened, Camilla reportedly realized her sister could be facing serious legal consequences because this was no longer just a private family issue. It had the potential to become a matter for law enforcement and the high courts. Camilla reportedly did not want her sister facing criminal charges. What allegedly happened next caught a lot of attention. At the time, the king was recovering from medical treatment and resting. During that period, Camilla reportedly gained access to his private quarters and used his official authority to issue what has been described as a protective directive. According to the claims, documents were prepared stating that the king, through his personal authority, was giving the brooch to her sister as a gift. The purpose was to transform what had been viewed as an unauthorized removal into what appeared to be a lawful transfer from the sovereign himself. If that directive had been accepted, it could have brought the investigation into Camilla's sister to an end. Investigators reportedly would have had little room to question her or pursue further legal action because the argument was that the king's authorization would protect everyone involved through sovereign authority. Camilla was allegedly trying to use the king's name and authority while he was recovering to make the entire issue disappear. The approach was seen by some as carefully planned. The palace has long-standing protocols for handling family disagreements privately. They usually resolve sensitive matters behind closed doors without attracting public attention. Camilla was reportedly counting on officials accepting the directive because it carried the king's seal, especially during his recovery. She was relying on the long-standing tradition that royal orders are rarely challenged, particularly while the monarch was recovering. But that's when everything changed. Princess Anne, who oversees the royal artifacts and serves as the official guardian of the Royal Collection Trust, received the directive and rejected it outright. She firmly stated that the brooch had never been classified as personal property and that no individual, regardless of rank or closeness to the throne, had the authority to treat national diplomatic gifts as private possessions that could simply be handed to private citizens. Instead of trying to smooth things over, and reportedly took a firm stand. She essentially said, "This is a legal issue, and we're treating it that way." She gathered all the evidence, including inventory records, provenance documents, and everything that allegedly showed the brooch had been taken without authorization and that Camilla's sister had no legal claim to it. She then delivered the entire file directly to Prince William at Kensington Palace. That changed everything because the heir to the throne now had the evidence in front of him, and it was no longer something that could simply disappear into palace bureaucracy. William's role is to protect the institution and ensure its future. And an alleged attempt to misuse state property through the king's authority during his recovery was not something to ignore. It was something that required a direct response. William reportedly had a major decision to make, and this is where many believe his leadership style became clear. He could have handled the matter the traditional way by keeping everything inside the palace, protecting the family's reputation, and quietly speaking with Camilla in hopes of resolving it. Instead, William reportedly viewed the situation as a straightforward legal issue. Someone had allegedly taken state property. The person's connection to the royal family did not change the nature of the alleged offense. He reportedly made it clear to his legal advisors that the focus would not be on shielding anyone from consequences or allowing family ties to avoid accountability. The message was that the rule of law should apply equally to everyone, including relatives of the monarchy. William reportedly introduced a broad policy stating that there would be no exceptions or special treatment for private individuals found possessing, concealing, or improperly claiming historical property belonging to the Crown estate. He reportedly intended the policy to become permanent, rather than a temporary measure. The way he approached it also drew attention. According to the claims, he transferred Queen Elizabeth's remaining collection, including many important historical artifacts and symbols, into a newly created organization called the Royal Heritage Trust. The reported structure placed those assets beyond the influence of any individual royal family member. They were legally tied to the direct line of succession and remain protected regardless of who occupied the throne or who was married to the monarch. In effect, the reported changes created a legal barrier designed to prevent anyone, including the reigning king or queen, from using state property for personal favors or private agreements. After the trust was officially established on June 10, 2026, any earlier protective orders or directives issued in the king's name reportedly lost their legal effect. They no longer carried legal standing. Any documents Camilla had allegedly relied on to protect her sister were considered ineffective at that point. Her sister was now reportedly facing high court proceedings as an ordinary private citizen. There was no palace immunity to rely on and no administrative action left to stop the process. William also reportedly made the new policy public enough that everyone within the royal household understood exactly what had changed and what the new expectations were. This wasn't presented as a subtle message. It was described as a clear signal that the modern monarchy would operate according to legal principles rather than family loyalty or personal protection. What happened next is where the story became even more dramatic. The reported search of Camilla's sister's residence followed soon afterward. High court enforcement measures were activated, and on the morning of June 10th, a task force reportedly arrived at her private home to recover the brooch. It was described as an emergency court-authorized seizure. Officers entered the property, located the sapphire Jubilee brooch, documented the process, and recovered it. The speed of the operation surprised many. From the moment William reportedly made his position clear to the execution of the search, everything moved within a very short period. There was little opportunity for further negotiations or for another legal strategy to be attempted. The enforcement was described as swift and decisive. Afterward, the palace press office reportedly entered a complete communications lockdown. Staff were not allowed to issue public comments without authorization from Kensington Palace. There were no official statements, detailed explanations, or press releases attempting to shape public opinion. The palace remained silent. Many believe that decision was intentional because offering detailed explanations could have prolonged the controversy and raised even more questions. Instead, the actions were left to speak for themselves. The brooch was recovered. The recovered state treasure had officially been returned to where it legally belonged. Camilla's reported effort to protect her sister from the consequences had failed. The fact that there were no attempts to negotiate or reach a compromise after the court-authorized action showed how firmly William was reportedly approaching the matter. There was no last-minute agreement and no quiet settlement behind closed doors. The legal process simply continued. What happened after the recovery also drew attention because the next public moment featured Catherine, Princess of Wales, wearing the sapphire Jubilee brooch during an official state engagement. This did not appear to be an accidental choice of jewellery. Many viewed it as a deliberate decision. Catherine wore the brooch on her ceremonial outfit before crowds and international dignitaries, displaying a piece that had reportedly just been recovered from Camilla's sister's residence. No public announcement accompanied the appearance. There was no explanation from Kensington Palace. Catherine simply wore the brooch as though it belonged there, and many believed that visual message carried more weight than any official statement. Without saying a word, it appeared to signal that the brooch had been recovered, documented, returned to its proper place, and remained part of the direct line of succession. The contrast also stood out. While Catherine wore the historic brooch associated with Queen Elizabeth and the direct line of succession, Camilla appeared wearing pieces from her personal jewellery collection. That was entirely appropriate, but the distinction over who wore which royal symbols seemed firmly established. That moment helped many observers understand the broader significance of the situation. It was not simply about recovering a valuable piece of jewellery. It was about defining how the modern monarchy functions and where authority ultimately rests. For many years, royal families were often believed to resolve sensitive matters privately. Problems were handled behind closed doors, family members were protected, and institutional influence sometimes shielded individuals from public consequences. That approach often avoided public controversy, even if it also attracted criticism. According to this interpretation, William and Anne signalled that those traditions had changed. Their message was that the rule of law applies to everyone, regardless of how close they are to the throne. And they didn't just say it, they actually demonstrated it. They backed up their words with action. When Camilla reportedly tried to use the king's authority and traditional palace procedures to protect her sister, there were no negotiations and no attempts to reach a compromise. Instead, the matter was reportedly taken to the courts, allowing the legal system to deal with it. That represented a major change because for decades, perhaps even generations, many people believed that connections to the royal family came with certain advantages. They may not have been official, but there was a widespread belief that personal relationships could influence outcomes. Camilla was reportedly relying on that expectation. She was reportedly counting on the idea that few people would want to aggressively pursue legal action involving the Queen Consort's sister. It could create public controversy and family tension. William reportedly viewed the situation differently. His position was that the issue was not about avoiding embarrassment, but about whether the institution truly upheld its principles. According to this account, he chose the principle of accountability. The brooch was returned, and the legal process continued. Supporters of that approach argue it established an important precedent. If someone violates the laws or rules protecting state property, the response should be a legal process rather than a private family discussion. That standard would apply regardless of family connections. The message was that anyone connected to the monarchy who allegedly broke the law could not simply depend on palace traditions for protection. They would still be expected to face legal accountability. The creation of the Royal Heritage Trust also reportedly limited Camilla's future influence over such matters. According to these claims, she could no longer issue new directives, negotiate alternative arrangements, or use her position as Queen Consort to advocate for relatives in ways that might affect state assets. The trust was designed to operate independently, with its own governance structure, while the assets remained protected for the direct line of succession. Many view this as a practical institutional safeguard because it recognized that people in positions of authority can sometimes face conflicts of interest. A monarch or queen consort could potentially wish to help relatives or make decisions that might not align with the institution's long-term interests. The trust structure was intended to remove both the opportunity and the temptation. Because these changes reportedly became widely known throughout the palace, many believe they could also discourage similar situations in the future. If someone else ever gets the idea that they could use their connections to get special treatment or to misappropriate state property, they now know that it's not going to work. They're going to face actual legal consequences. The palace isn't going to protect them. What I think is really interesting about how this all played out is the speed of it and the decisiveness. Everything reportedly moved with very little delay, and that alone became one of the biggest talking points. Instead of allowing the issue to drag on for months, the response appeared to send a message that certain matters would be dealt with quickly once they reached the appropriate authorities. There was no prolonged negotiation, there was no back and forth, there was no attempt to keep it quiet and manage it the traditional way. William saw the situation, he understood what needed to happen, and he made it happen fast and clean, which actually suggests something about how he thinks about his role and about power within the institution. To many observers, it looked like protecting the monarchy itself was placed above protecting any one individual. That approach, if consistently followed, could influence how future controversies are handled and shape expectations for years to come. Catherine wearing the brooch publicly is kind of the exclamation point on all of this. It's a visual confirmation that the recovery was successful and that the peace is now secured within the direct line of succession. It's also a subtle but clear statement about where power actually resides. Royal appearances are often carefully watched, and even small details can generate huge discussions. Whether intentional or not, this appearance quickly became one of the most talked about moments connected to the entire story. Catherine is the future. The brooch belongs with the future, not with Camilla, not with Camilla's family, but with the people who are going to be running the institution next. The broader implication here is that the British monarchy is establishing that it functions under the rule of law just like any other institution would. Many people saw this as a reminder that historic royal treasures are expected to remain protected for future generations rather than becoming part of private family arrangements. You can't hide behind the title. You can't rely on family connections to get you out of legal trouble. If you violate the law, you face consequences. And that actually probably makes the institution stronger in a lot of ways because it means the monarchy can't be manipulated by internal family politics. Public confidence often depends on whether people believe the same standards apply to everyone, regardless of status or influence. It has actual rules, and those rules apply universally. When you step back and look at the entire chain of events, what you see is Princess Anne saying no to a directive from the king. You see Prince William taking that information and treating it as a legal matter rather than a family matter. You see the High Court getting involved. You also see a process that, according to this account, placed legal procedures ahead of personal relationships, something that many believe represents a meaningful shift in how these situations are handled. You see assets being moved into a trust structure that protects them from future manipulation. And you see Catherine wearing a recovered piece of state property in public as the final confirmation that the institution protected what it was supposed to protect. That's a very different monarchy than the one that existed even a few years ago. Whether every detail of this story is ultimately confirmed or not, it has certainly fueled debate about accountability, transparency, and the future direction of the royal family. It's an institution that's willing to enforce its own rules even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means creating tension with people who hold powerful positions within the family structure. That matters. That suggests something about the future and about what kind of institution the monarchy is actually going to be going forward. What do you think about this entire story? Do you believe it represents a real turning point for the monarchy? Or is there still more to learn before reaching that conclusion? Share your thoughts in the comments below because I'd really like to know your opinion. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next royal update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.